Hello, everyone. This is Whitney Will from Starheart Astrology, and I'm here tuning in for your astrology check-in. I know I'm a day late. That is just about starting a new job and then my whole family coming down with COVID. So we're all okay. In terms of COVID situation, it seems pretty mild, but it's definitely causing some reorganization stuff. And so I apologize that this is coming out a day late and not on my normal Wednesday schedule. So let's just take a moment and drop in and tune in with the cosmic family that we're all a part of, the cycles that we all find our moments of belonging in that can ground us and help us feel a part of things. And right, the planetary body that really helps with that the most is the moon, right? The moon is the connective tissue between us and other people, between us and the biological world, our reminder constantly that we are a participant in these things. And so we start with the moon. And yesterday, Wednesday, February 23rd, the moon went into her fourth quarter phase. So from now until next Wednesday, when I'm checking in again, we have the fourth quarter of the moon. And this is the last quarter of the lunar month. It is the crone quarter of the lunar month. It is the quarter of making peace, of finishing things up, of surrender, of letting go. You can ritualize this in really easy ways. Like, for one way that I like to honor the fourth quarter of the lunar month is to try and not go to the grocery store. So we'll just try to, to eat what is available and kind of clean up and clear space for the new lunar month of kind of wrapping things up. I also, in the past, have made bone broth in the balsamic phase of the moon, and just to ritualize and bring into the felt sense and the smelt sense of it, the harvesting the nourishment from the core of things, because that's really what the crone phase of the moon does. And the crone role is meaning making, is tradition holding, is honoring of our connections with things and of building those connections and being kind of the caretaker of those connections. So that's what we're working with. Now, when we're in this phase of the moon, we'll hit the balsamic phase on Sunday, and then we'll be really sleepy. So the energy is definitely down. And so it's just as much as you can, if you can spend the rest of the week just wrapping things up and then rest in the weekend and rest into the beginning of next week. That can be really, really restorative for you to enter the next lunar month that begins next Wednesday. Also, what happened yesterday is that Mercury left the post shadow of its retrograde. So that's really important because we're kind of clear of that stuff. And so what we're seeing, I'm kind of imagining just this ice flow kind of breaking up. This Capricornian ice flow that has just dominated is slowly breaking up. And we have Mercury passed out of the shadow of its retrograde. In the next week, we'll have Venus out of the shadow of her retrograde, though that's a little bit more of a complicated story, this retrograde, I think, and I'll get into that in a minute. But so we're seeing kind of like all of the storylines concentrated in the Capricornian parts of our charts. And we have had the sun move into Pisces, and Mercury is now solidly in post shadow Aquarius. And so, right, we're getting some more diversity happening again in some areas. So Mercury clears the post shadow, and then right snap today on Thursday, the 24th, hits a square with Uranus. And that square with Uranus, I think, right, really, it's it's like the bullhorn of Mercury leaving the post shadow of its retrograde, because it hits the tripwire of Uranus. And whether that comes in the form of inspiration or of some kind of accident or some kind of surprise or some kind of new news, it definitely changes the dominant storylines in what we're thinking about. Especially if we're in a Mercury ruled profection year or profection month, right? We're going to be more sensitive to that. But so that's kind of like, okay, chapter close, here we go. We're on to new Mercury territory. And that's really the story that we have going on really through much of the weekend. There is a kind of quietness to the transits that we get. Yeah, into next week on March 1st, we have the sun sextiling Uranus. So again, that kind of infuses that inspiration or that electric jolt of Uranus, but in a gentle, inspiring way with the sextile. Venus also technically clears the shadow of her retrograde on March 1st. And so we're kind of out of the Venus retrograde. But I think it's a little bit different because while she's technically beyond the degree, she's still in the last few degrees of Capricorn, and she doesn't form her exact third conjunction with Pluto until March 3rd, so a little bit later in the week. And that was such a key feature of this Venus retrograde that I'm kind of not really seeing her clear the post shadow until she enters Aquarius a week from this weekend. So that happens on Saturday, February 5th. So I'll talk about that next week. So yeah, so technically she's clearing, the sun's getting a little bit of this nice, I don't know, hopefully it's nice interaction with Uranus. And then we have two things happen next Wednesday, which obviously I'll reiterate then, but we have a Pisces new moon at 12 degrees of Pisces. Uh-oh, my throat. So our annual space of renewal in whichever area of our chart is ruled by Pisces, it's coming, one cycle is coming to a close, another one is opening, but this is a very different Pisces new moon than we've had for the past couple of years because Jupiter is in Pisces. And so we can really connect back to that bedrock of faith that rests under things, and really allow ourselves to not be so hyper-focused on the analytical, and really surrender to or trust the promise that we're all in this together. So I will release a separate specific video on that. We also have Mercury conjoining Saturn. So now that Saturn is out ahead of Uranus, whenever we have planets transiting through the band of the fixed signs where they're aspecting them, they're going to hit Uranus and then Saturn. So they get this kind of rebellion call, and then they have the contraction back to Saturn. So we kind of have this, right? We hit this tripwire on Thursday with Mercury square Uranus, and then we are going to have it connect back with Saturn on Wednesday. So that casts a little bit of a sobering sense over the new moon, but I think it's also protective because we're not going to get too lost in some of the boundlessness of Pisces, because Mercury and Saturn are together figuring out the plan. I really like Mercury and Saturn contacts because there's so much creativity involved in their mercurial archetype that I think it responds really well to Saturn. It's like, oh, there's constrictions here, so let's try this, or let's try this, or let's try this, right? Now you still need Mars to accomplish anything, but we're at a new moon, so we're percolating the possibilities. We are connecting ourselves back into the cycle and the story of the world, and reconnecting as participants with that before the waxing energy of the moon brings us into, I think, a very different month than the last 3 months that we've had, because as I said, there's kind of been this extended Capricorn season with all of these Capricornian themes. And this new moon really marks the first lunar month that isn't dominated with that. And so we're going to see a lot of shifts out of that storyline. And like I was saying, a kind of breakup of that ice flow. So I'm excited for that, but I'm going to rest in the next week, try to get over COVID, try to just be gentle and grounded with myself, and make those connections. Okay, I'm going to step into the question and answer portion of this. So each week I take a question from a listener and we discuss it. If you want to see the charts for this, I also record these videos on YouTube. And so you can see the anonymous chart. So this person, happy birthday, by the way, their birthday was yesterday. They turned 27 years old and switched into a 4th house perfection year. So everyone who's 27 is in a 4th house perfection year. It's going to depend on how it goes in terms of what's happening. So the question that they put to me was about Mars and about struggling with the Mars archetype and how to deal with the Mars archetype in a Mars perfection year. And I love this question. I find Mars to be the planet that I end up thinking the most about. In terms of malefics, I definitely am more, Saturn is a lot more intuitive for me. Mars involves a lot of conscious effort of how do I bring in Mars? And so this question of, how do I deal with Mars during my Mars perfection year, during my 4th house perfection year? The 4th house perfection year is about re-establishing your foundations. It's about the questions of what you need, where you want to settle, how you feel safe, how you come to be at home in yourself. The 4th house perfection year is also, you will experience your progressed lunar return, which has a lot of those themes. And I go over all of this in my Saturn return course, because this 4th house perfection year really brings you into the beginning of the Saturn return years. When you're 27, it's going to be different having a 4th house perfection year in other places. But anyway, so when we look at this person's chart, we see that there's a complicated story with Mars, because they have Aries in the 4th, ruled by a retrograde Mars in Leo in the 8th. So that layers quite a lot of complication on top. So one thing about the 8th house is we tend to stick things in there that we are ashamed of, maybe that we were shamed for when we were younger, but really that when those things get triggered, we hide in a shame cave. And so Mars in Leo is a very bold, brash, has the heart of the warrior, knows what it wants, right? And when it gets put in the 8th house, that really only comes out in deep intimacy. So we try to hide that from the world, but of course it comes out when we become really close to someone. So you can have your truest experience of planets in the 8th house comes out in your intimate relationships. And so that can be, for this person, not being a very assertive person, necessarily in public, at work, right? But she's going to feel that in her relationships. And then a retrograde Mars too. And what I've found with retrograde Mars is, for most people natally, is that they are, in general, people that are very, like, not anti-conflict, but they just, there's just not a lot of anger, there's not a lot of conflict, and then something will get triggered and it kind of goes boom. So it's kind of like, right, Mars in retrograde is reconsidering how it's going to assert itself. And there's a kind of you know, not wanting to come on too strong, not wanting to come on too strong. And then suddenly the, you know, the last boundary is violated and especially in a fire sign. So it's really, right, I think the key to working with this retrograde Mars and Leo in the 8th is to really understand that Mars as the champion of the heart, and that it will detonate if you are being inauthentic and not advocating for your own needs, and not going for the things that you truly care about and the things that you want, right? This Mars isn't trying to sabotage. This person's sun is in Pisces in the 3rd, so they have a night chart. So Mars is their sect malefic. So not as problematic as if they had a day chart. So really this kind of champion. Now the other thing with Mars in the 8th and planets in the 8th is that it can be hard to understand them unless we are in deep relationships. So, right, it's not just that they come out in our intimacy, but that we get access to them through our intimacy. So really finding that drive and that sense of direction through one's close relationships and being able to discover that for oneself. So that's what I have about how to work with this. I think it's really like, this person is a Capricorn rising, has lots of Capricorn, Pisces, right? But this is a year of fire. And really connecting with that strong sense of desire that resides within you, that it's part of your vitality, that it's part of your joy, that it's not something to suppress. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next week, hopefully on time. Okay, if you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. I appreciate it so much. Okay, bye.